Started for this wonderful February 3rd day. It's a significant day for me because it would have been my wife's 79th birthday today. It's hard to imagine that she's been gone 19 years, but she's certainly with me all the time. I also would like to acknowledge the fact that we have Ron Hedrick on board. As you all know Ron, and he actually was in the very beginning of this launch of the what we call the shelter strike teams. So Ron, it's great to have you back on the group. That said, we don't have a heavily packed agenda this morning. Depends upon how much time we take to explain some of these things. We're going to give you an insight into the development of the TRMT and the RRMT response teams. We're ratcheting that up with the help of Jody Akers and Ron Hedrick and Corey Tanner and a few others. We'll be working through that, and Corey's going to get into that in a minute. And then Diana is going to give you a little bit of information on a few things, the least of that which is we're going to start creating a document in support of the SST, that is the Shelter Strike Team Group, and the procedures and processes that we've developed and will continue to do so. And then I'll wrap it up with a few comments about where this is going as far as a national basis is concerned, and answer any of your questions, etc. So this is the beginning of 2021 with the strike team as part of Josh Jackson's desire to get a really good, solid regional response in place. So, and the SS team will be a very significant part of that. So all of that said, Corey, why don't you go ahead and get into the TRMT and the RRMT process and where it's going.
Thanks, Clark. So I have a little presentation. I'm going to share my screen. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So the Territory Response Management Team, this is just an overview of the team. There's a number of individuals who are on this call who may be on their own chapter level TRMTs. And even some of us are on the RRMT, which is the Regional Management Team. Territory Response Management Team is a territory response. It's trained Red Crossers who can set up a level 2 response and work with the chapter. So TRMTs are at the, yeah.
Sorry, are you sharing some slides? Because we just see a beautiful face.
You don't, oh, how, okay. Where, I gotta go back. Let's try again. Stop sharing. I'm gonna share, but I must have, now do you see the here you go. You see my Territory Response Management? Yeah, thank you.
Got it.
So level 2 management structure as well as supporting the chapter. So a Territory Response Management Team is a chapter level response team. Regional Response Management Team is a regional level. So as we know, everything starts from a DAT call. So in a DAT,
please record your message. When you've finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Okay. So we have the DAT duty officer, as you know, which is the DDO. They call the DAT supervisor, and this is how a DAT call starts. When it gets beyond a DAT call, it may be time to call in the TRMT. So the first thing that happens actually with the DAT call, when there is a determination that we have to do sheltering, the strike team gets called in. The strike team then operates underneath the operations group, as most of you know. So a regional response level 1 is up to $10,000. A level 2 is between 10,000 but less than 50,000. So this is the TRMT operates in those level 1s and level 2s. However, under COVID, it may go to a level 3 only because of the cost of sheltering our clients in hotels. I think most of us know that just got very expensive. So in a level 2, you have the DRO director, and these 6 positions: AD of Ops, Workforce, Logistics, Information and Planning, External Relations, Finance, and the Job Director are the positions for a TRMT. So you are trained to operate in one of these director positions. So these individuals are individuals who are going to operate with you, but you're already trained to do that. That's what your gaps are for. Any questions on the TO? Perfect, hearing none. So you should have the recommendation of your DPM to be on the TRMT. You must have a gap. It should be supervisor or above. You can operate in a position other than your normal role. So if normally perhaps you're a sheltering SV, but you also have a logistics SV gap, you can work in either role. You can be the AD of Ops or the AD of Logistics. So it can be something outside of your normal role as long as you have the gap and you have experience. Everyone with an SV gap has to have taken ConOps, so that should not be a problem. Facilitative leadership is also a very good class to have. Are there any questions about requirements for a TRMT placement? Okay, as I said, the positions are the Job Director, ER, Ops, Planning, Logistics, and Workforce. The director is responsible for ensuring the mission is accomplished, which has to include these things: service delivery, working with partners, communicating to the public and your workforce, being a good steward of the donor dollars, and make sure that you have the right people in the right places to do the job and they are treated well. ER is responsible for all interface between Red Cross and external partners, community, government, media, and fundraising. Now, typically, fundraising in anything lower than, a 4, fundraising doesn't really come into it. We use the chapter or the regional level fundraising people, so we don't do that. But you will communicate with them. In Ops, sheltering, feeding, bulk distribution, DCS, TMH, ICCT, and recovery all fall under Ops. I think a lot of us got a lot of practice in all of this stuff with the Cameron Peak fires. Planning lead is responsible for making sure all the reports are done, everything's on time. One of the new things that comes under the operations function is a working knowledge of teams, being able to train other individuals on teams, making sure you're creating the meetings on teams. That all falls under planning. Logistics is the same as always. You need the material, the stuff. Okay, so also you have to make sure that everyone has PPE and pre-packaged individual items. So COVID protocols work for all of these things. Things are a little bit different, but the overall management of the operation doesn't change even under COVID. Workforce is our newest under ConOps. I think most of us are aware of that. That's staff. So some of the things you have to make sure as workforce is you get the staff, you assign them correctly for their gaps, make sure those individuals have evals, and that they get released from the response. Okay, you have to do in a level 2, level 1, you still have to do all of these things, the IIR, the service delivery plan, 5266s. This helps planning is responsible for making sure this gets done, but all those leads get information into planning to make sure these are taken care of. Okay, this is where I need Tony. Tony, I don't know who your TRMT lead is.
Okay, we have Karen McClure,
Okay,
Yeah.
Karen, I'll put her in there. Thank you.
Lorraine Jansen.
They're your leads?
Yep.
Perfect, I'll get them in there. So Clark is for Mile High. I do Seco, Jody Akers does WECO, and Garrick does Wyoming. So if you are interested in becoming part of the TRMT, these are the individuals that you're going to want to get to. Reach out. TRMT is starting up. And then we'll be doing some RRMT stuff probably in April. Are there any questions about the TRMT?
Hey, Julie, this is Amy.
All right, yeah, this is Corey.
Hey, Corey, it's Amy. Can you guys send me the link to my email? It's Amy Harrison.
Link to your email.
Yeah, for the team.
I can do that, Corey.
Thank you
Yeah.
very much.
Thanks, Julie.
Thanks, Julie. So what happens is that once you've gone through the TRMT training, which this was just an overview of the process and what it is, once you go through that training, and there is training, you have to have experience. You should have experience on your TRMT. You can apply to become part of the RRMT, which is the Regional Response Management Team. It is set up similarly. All those same jobs are under RRMT, but you have to have more experience, and that is with the approval of Josh. So Josh, at the end of the day, is the one who approves individuals and their placement on the Regional Response Management Team. Regional Response Management Team could go anywhere in the region, work anywhere in the region, where typically a TRMT is only at your chapter level. Are there any questions? So I know that Seco has a TRMT training on the 15th of February. Each of the different chapters are doing trainings. This month, we're trying to get everyone in the chapters to do their TRMT trainings this month, and then the RMT will kick up. As you know, I mean, almost all of us were working on the Cameron Peak fire, so we understand the structure, I think, of an operation a little bit better. And please don't hit me, but it's going to be, I think, just a wild fire season again. We're way too dry. So this is going to be very important if you want to be able to step up and be in a leadership role for your area and for the region in a response, which we will definitely have. Any questions? Clark, I'm going to throw it back to you then.
Okay, great. Thanks, Corey. Wonder why that's an echo. The comment, a couple of comments I wanted to make about this is that be sure to work with your chapter DPMs as far as getting into the TRMT group so that we can definitely know the number of people that we're going to be training when we start these sessions. Jody Akers is working with us to develop this, and we'll try to complete this certainly by the end of the month. As Corey mentioned, the anticipation of a fire season again that we're going to have to deal with stares us in the face, and so we want to be ready before that really confronts us. And we do want to be able to really have a good regional response plan in place. The shelter strike team is a very critical part of that response. And we intend to go along with the original format that we developed by developing teams that can work in teams of 4 so we can get those initial folks on the ground just as quickly as possible, so that they can then begin to work with the leadership group to provide the response at the levels and with the resources that we would need to have coming through the region. I think you've all heard a number of times from a number of folks throughout the region and even the division that our response to the fires in Northern Colorado last year was just an outstanding performance by the folks in this region. And I would echo that we did really, I think, a very significant job in being able to deal with the complexity that we had to deal with that particular event. So I think we're off and running. Diana, if you're ready to, go ahead and go through a few of the things that you need to explain and bring up, go ahead and take it.
Well, I was just going to talk about the after action review that is coming up in a couple of weeks. And it doesn't really matter how prepared we may be. No deployment is ever the same, especially in 2020. So because that after action review is coming up for those who were part of the Colorado wildfires, we would like to share your feedback. And would anybody care to share your experience, what you feel went well, what could have been better, what you learned, what your experience was with the Colorado wildfires?
Yeah, Diana, let me add a comment to here. This is really your opportunity of those of you that were engaged in that event. We are going to have that, what is the mass care review. I believe it's February 10th, and the leadership that was part of that will be on that call. So not everybody here will be on that call. So we really need to have your input. So just go ahead and acknowledge yourself, bring up whatever thoughts you might want to have conveyed to the team that's reviewing this. There are a number of sessions, I think probably close to 5, that are going to go through the different areas. So this is what we really want to have here is your experience in terms of the mass care, shelter and feeding response, et cetera. So go ahead, anybody?
Clark, this is Tony from NOCO.
Yeah, Tony, go ahead.
So I think what really was beneficial and actually essentially what catered to the success we had was the strike team developments and all the Friday trainings that we had. The scenarios actually, which actually happened in real life when we had the Cameron Peak response, were really helpful and beneficial. I know for my team, NOCO, with the preparation we had, we actually were able to deal with the COVID environment. The strike team Go Kits was really essential. One experience that we had, and it was actually on and off, we were stood up for an evacuation site, I'd say at least a half a dozen times till eventually it happened. So it was like, crying wolf. But I think the preparation, and I'm very happy that we started up this with the strike team exercises and training, because I think that was essentially one of the reasons why we were so successful. So thank you in part to the team and, to everybody that was developing it, that really fostered our success. So I want to thank the team and everyone that participated.
Thanks, Tony. How about some of you folks that were supervisors in the different shelters? Could you share some of the experiences and maybe offer some comments in terms of how we can get better?
Brian?
Yeah, thank you. This is Brian Pauls. The one thing that I really appreciated, I guess, was being able to see everybody. I came up for a day just to meet people that I saw names, but I didn't get to see faces. So it really helped me when I came up for that one day to see everybody. But, one thing I will say, the communication was pretty good. We had the teams meetings every day, and I certainly appreciated what Diana did in conveying the information. So definitely, having meetings was very important. But I really like being able to see everybody. So that made a difference for me when I could come up for a day.
Thanks, Brian. Great.
Jessica?
Can you hear me okay? I'm driving.
Yes, we hear you fine.
Okay, perfect. I have two things, one positive, one negative. Or I guess the negative is more like a suggestion for if this summer turns out to be the same as last, which I hope it does not. I know a lot of the local NOCO volunteers that were newer were struggling with the full 12-hour days, which I know is just routine on a deployment. But if there could be some kind of system where like NOCO people or wherever the fire is, like their locals could have split shifts if they have another volunteer to like flip flop with, if that makes sense. Because I ran a couple different shelters through the whole thing, and I had a couple good volunteers just quit, like stop doing it because they didn't want to do the full 12-hour days, which sucks to get someone in a routine and then just disappear. So, and then the positive was how quickly people got us supplies to the hotels when we needed them. Like I was out in Greeley at a couple hotels, and we would close the shelter, and then within 24 hours it would be back open. And we always had a pretty quick turnaround with supplies, which was nice, especially because we were kind of more outside of the normal range of what everyone else was doing.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Jessica. This is something that we could work on with the newer volunteers. We always tell our volunteers that normally we will be working 12-hour shifts, but sometimes, especially when it's a little bit more local, we could perhaps work with them and split the shifts to 6 hours or 8 hours, whatever is more convenient. But it is normally a 12-hour shift when we're deployed nationally. But thank you.
Scott Murphy, you got your hand up?
Yeah, just a few comments and thoughts.
Great. Super.
So,
one
of the things I noticed as a shelter lead at the time was the differences when the evac centers were sending us people. We were getting lots of different processes. So I really think nailing down what we want the evac centers to do, as far as, are they going to enter the people into the, I forget the name of the Excel sheet, but basically, are they going to add them on there before they come to the hotel? And are they going to will the evac center call the hotel? There is lots of differences. So I'm not saying which one's best. I'm saying we just need one process, and we had lots of different processes.
Scott, that's a good point. Tony, I know you had people out at the evac center and bringing people registration. Is anybody on that worked out there that might tell us some of the things that they had to deal with that may have, impacted what Scott was talking about, so we can take a look at maybe how we, improve that?
Yeah, this is
Clark.
Yeah, go ahead, Lorraine.
Initially, when we opened up the evac center at Cache La Poudre, we did not have the Excel spreadsheet. And then we found out about a week or two into the DR that we were not using the Excel spreadsheet correctly. And that is just, part of the training process. But the other thing was computer availability. Without those computers, a lot of that information was not able to get in. We finally got a rhythm going at Cache La Poudre where we had one person inputting everything into the spreadsheet, and then another person calling to the hotels. And I know when Estes Park blew up, I wasn't there, but again, you know, the computer availability, having that rhythm, like Scott said, where we have processes set up. And I think it was just basically a learning curve on everybody's side, because we'd never done this before. And when Estes Park blew up, I understand, got a little crazy for a while, because there were so many people coming in and people coming on board. There wasn't time, I understand, to get them trained up on what was going on. So definitely I agree with Scott that if we can get some processes down, but a lot of that goes along with having the electronics available to get those processes and keep them moving forward. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, as long as I'm on, is I really appreciate the flexibility of everybody who is working in the shelters, because they might have started in one shelter in the morning and by evening they were in another shelter 20 or 30 miles away. And that flexibility amongst the work crew was absolutely imperative, and I appreciate everybody's help on that.
Great, thanks for that. We got a couple of hands up, so I'll just go with the first one I see. Kathy Kofi, you're on.
Hi, everybody. I was there when Estes Park blew up, and a week or so before that. One of the things that I really appreciated was getting a lot of experience in things that can happen quickly. Changes happen very quickly. And, you know, we'd be closing a shelter one day or sending a bunch of people home one day, and then later that afternoon, reopening for a bunch of new evacuees. So it was a really great exercise in going with the flow and changing at the drop of a hat. There were a couple of things that I noted that would have been a little bit more helpful. One of those is that I did work in the evac center one day, and I was not able to use a shelter phone to call the hotels to find out their availability, because it was ringing off the hook, because it was the official phone number for the public to call to find out where to go to get shelter. So because of that, I had to use my personal cell phone to make all the phone calls to hotels, and then to call clients to have them to, you know, instruct them to go to those hotels. Part of that led to an error in that my personal phone number was published on the Estes Park Gazette site as the official phone number to call if you need shelter. So even after I went home, I was getting phone calls. So that was a little wonky, but I think had we had more more phones, more official Red Cross shelter phones available to us at the evac center, that would have helped a lot avoid those issues, and to be able to accommodate some of the more of the incoming calls. So that was one of the things. I really appreciated the information that I got at some of the operational meetings, but unfortunately the operational meetings were usually held at dinner time, and it was pretty difficult for shelter staff to attend those meetings because we were busy serving all our clients. And so I don't know how we solved that problem. That's been true on every DR. So I don't really know if there's a solution for that. But those are the main things that I had.
Great, thanks, Kathy. That's great, great feedback. Karen McClure, you've had your hand up, so go ahead. Karen.
Yeah, thanks, Clark. I worked a lot of the evacuation centers, and so initially this process, as Lorraine alluded to, was new to us, and we set up something that worked for us where we would call the hotel because we had someone who could do the calling, and we had a process how that worked. But when Estes Park happened, there was this flood of people, and there were not enough shelter workers to do that same process again. And what ended up happening is that we simply filled out a shelter form for the individuals, called hotels to see how many rooms they had available, and sent groups of people with their shelter registrations to those hotels without entering anything into a database. And that was because there was just no time and no place. And with COVID, no way to get things put in place in that hectic time frame where you had hundreds of people flooding into the evacuation center, and you just couldn't make it happen any other way. I realize that a process is a fantastic idea. I totally agree with that. It just depends on if you have staffing to make an ideal process work. So that's my comment.
Great input. Linda Bullock, you got your hand up. Linda, your mic's muted. There you go.
I was there before Estes blew up and then after, and I have to reiterate what both the two previous people said. You know, it really was going fairly smoothly until Estes blew up. At that point, that's when it seemed like a lot of, and it was because of new staff or lack of staff, or, for all of the other reasons. But one thing that I think we need to get clarity on is we were at the first hotel, the first shelter, when people came down out of Estes. And so people were stopping and trying to get in that way. We were getting people sent to us, and we were also getting people who made reservations online and showed up. And so there was a lot of confusion there for at least a few days. And then clarity on if someone makes a reservation ahead of time at the hotel and then wants to become a client, what is the exact process we want to follow on that, and what do we want to tell those people? Do we want to invite those people to be clients if they have not, we're not aware of it? So there's a lot of kind of questions about that. The other piece would be, I think we need to really look at feeding and special meals. I threw away way too many special meals, and I know, they don't come cheaply when we're doing it that way. So I think we need to really look at, do we line up with restaurants ahead of time and have some real clarity on what we need if we say a gluten-free meal or a vegetarian meal, and what our expectations are. But that's it. It was really, I thought, it was such a wonderful experience for learning. I think we're going to be way ahead of the game this year.
Thanks, Linda. Appreciate that very much. Trish, you got your hand up.
I do, Clark, and to the team. I'll offer my perspective from two perches. I worked in shelters twice during Cameron Peak, and then I then ended up doing the staffing for the duration of what the October fire blow up happened. And I don't know if there is full appreciation on just how how significant we were able to accomplish here within the region in going through that time, Clark and Diana and others. I mean, it was absolutely stunning. There's a number somewhere, but we probably put up 40 shelters in probably not even a 2-day duration, perhaps 48 hours or 24 hours. So it really, it's an unbelievable. I mean, to me, it was just stunning, especially because at the beginning of the week, when I was backfilling for Sheila on staffing, it was meant to be a no-brainer, really quiet, nothing going on. And this all occurred within such a short period of time. So I will reinforce the strike team model having paid off. and having twice over the course of the summer and also in October, having done the staffing work, it was the first place I would go to in terms of looking for resources to meet needs. I will also reinforce comments that had been made in terms of some more flexibility, both around the shifts and duration of shifts, and also the number of days when it's local. You know, so especially as we went into kind of the national model, there was a mindset that we wanted people for 14 days. And there were a lot of people who could say, listen, I can come in for the weekend, I can do it a little bit less, you know. So I think having some flexibility about that, because there were some people who were very willing, who were very gapped and trained, but it was hard to break out of that 14-day mindset with some of the leads. And so some people who wanted to jump in, you know, were kind of sitting on the sidelines. And then my third thing is that this would be, I think it's a bigger picture, but I don't know if people perhaps fully appreciate that in October, and with the help of Channel 9 News, we had over 600 local volunteers who stepped forward throughout Colorado that wanted to be engaged in some form or fashion based on Channel 9's recruitment efforts for volunteers. So, you know, right now, volunteer services and between the staffing, you know, we worked through and we were able to engage a few people, but we have quite a pool of people here locally who are slowly but surely being brought into the organization and trained up, that we might want to look at expediting, given Corey's comments about the wildfire season, and you know, start looking at some of these new people coming in to get them trained up. So those are some comments I would offer.
That's super. Thanks so much. Let me ask you this question of the group. You know, we operate and had to operate that DR under the environment of COVID and all of the things that we had to manage with our COVID procedures and requirements. I'd like some feedback from you folks that were on the ground as to how do we continue to improve the response, utilizing and maintaining that COVID policies, procedures that have been given to us, because we're going to be working in this COVID environment probably towards the end of the year. So if we do stand up an operation during the spring and summer, we're going to be in that environment. So I'd like to have some feedback as to your perceptions as to how do we maintain all of those things and make sure that we are in compliance and working with people.
Hey, Clark, this is Tony.
Yeah, Tony.
So I think practice makes perfect. I think what the scenario-based, you know, cases that you did in the past with the strike team meetings continue, and just work around that, you know, working around that platform, because that worked really well. So I think continuing that and just, you know, emphasizing that topic would definitely continue, you know, our quality improvement.
Super. For those of you who were supervisors at the various non-congregate shelters, I'd like to hear some input in regards to your working relationship with the hotel staff and the COVID issues that we had to deal with.
Michelle, do you have your hand up?
Yeah, who's this?
This is Michelle.
Yeah, Michelle, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. What I was going to mention is a little more, I guess, appropriate or along the lines of the previous conversation we were having about what went well and what could be improved.
Well, that's what we're doing. Yeah, go right ahead.
Well, I was going to say this had to do with casework, though, versus shelters. One of the things that I really appreciated was everybody that stepped up in casework from other chapters and did a fantastic job helping us out. And also IT, when we got a spreadsheet up and going, Al and IT really worked well. And helping us tweak it so we got all the integral information on that. Two things that I think could have been improved, and I think with our new RC Cares will work a little better. I had all those great people stepping up to volunteer, but a lot of them had not used their email for a while, couldn't access that, and we had trouble getting everybody, I guess, oriented to how to use Teams and getting into the Teams meetings. So I had a lot of caseworkers that missed out on meetings or came in halfway through because we had difficulty with access. And then the other thing I wanted to mention was in regards to HIPAA policy. I know it's real tough if you have not been in the medical field to understand exactly what HIPAA policy is and regulations. And in a lot of the spreadsheets and casework, I know people were trying to be helpful in the situation when they were adding information, allergies and such. I do understand in regards to meals and such, but we really need to walk a fine line between what information we put in to the cases and what we do not, and also with registration. The fact that someone has dementia is good to understand if they have a family member with that, but we need to keep the diagnosis, to my knowledge, out of those cases. I don't know if we need to take a better look at that or what we can do along those lines.
Okay. You still there, Michelle?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
I was going to say, for instance, in the hospitals, when someone's a fall risk, instead of posting in their room or something, instead of writing fall risk, they have a leaf that they place up. I think we just need to orient people a little better as to what the HIPAA policy is, and maybe look at some ways to include it within the cases or registration that doesn't violate their privacy.
Very good. Good information. Sylvia Rumaker, how are you doing? You got your hand up. What do you want to share? Sylvia, go away. Okay.
Hi, this is Sylvia. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I didn't mean to have my hand up. I don't even see my screen, so I can't take it off. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Kathy, you still got your hand up, or do you have another comment?
Nope, I'll take my hand down. Thanks.
Okay, fine. So how about some more of you folks that were, shelter managers, supervisors that had to deal with our partners of hotels? What kind of insights can you give us in terms of how things went, and can we improve it?
Hi, Clark. This is Scott.
Yes,
I can
Scott.
speak to that just a little bit. I was at several different hotels, and with the actual hotel staff, I found it very, very welcoming. Worked with us very closely. Went just fine. I don't have anything to add there. One procedure I thought worked fairly well was having our basically whenever we had folks come down to the lobby area, we would have their temperature if we had the remote thermostat or whatever infrared thermostat. I found that to be very useful. That gets a real temperature check on all of our clients, or most of them, and on almost a daily basis. Whereas like the temperature strips, I think are getting zero utilization, are actually happening. So that part, I think we need to move away from that idea, because I just don't think that our clients will ever do it. But that's just an opinion.
That's good. Good point.
Yeah, so I just really think that those infrared thermal guns at every shelter is, if possible, is great to have, and utilize them like crazy. And let's try to isolate anybody who's showing signs of fevers quickly. So anyways, that's it.
All right. Thank you so much, Scott. Amy Harrison, got your hand up?
So I would just say I was kind of on the outside of things. I wasn't actually over in any of the shelters or over in person, I was kind of in the background. The things that I saw, there was a lot of confusion of if there was places available at some of the hotels, and I had several calls come to me to my personal phone because I reached out to people, and they were saying that they would call and they would get told that they needed to go down there, and they would go get down there, and they would get told that they were full, so that they didn't know if they were going to be able to put them up. So I don't know if there's a way to improve, like if the people are sent there knowing that they're going to get a place before they drive like 2-3 hours, that would help, as well as if there's like a change of phone numbers throughout the event. I know there was some confusion of, well, who's supposed to be called. As a duty officer, that was one thing, like I would get calls for those. And there wasn't really any DDOs that I knew of that had been told, hey, this is what's going on. Granted, I was kind of out of the loop because I was pregnant at the time when all that was happening. So those are just kind of some things that I saw from the outside that could try to be worked on as well.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Bob Springer, you got your hand up.
Yes, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Pardon me?
Clark, can you hear me okay?
You're kind of muffled.
Let me try something.
No.
No? Darn it. I'll try again in a little bit. Let me work on it.
Okay. Let me go to Lori. She's got your hand up. We'll come back to you, Bob. Go ahead, Lori.
Thanks, Clark. So I was a co-team lead at Embassy Suites when Estes Park blew up. And I think that some of the people don't understand the process that had to go through. You know, when you check out time's not till 10 or 11. So we can't get the hotel number of how many are available, how many rooms are available for the clients coming in until 11 or 12 o'clock. So it was imperative that the managers at each site, shelter managers at each site, let us know when they got those numbers so that we could be fielding all of the clients to those areas that had open rooms. That's why when they called 2 or 3 hours before they came, we wouldn't know if there was an availability or not. And honestly, by the time 1 or 2 o'clock came around, the hotels had no availability. So we had to open up other shelters or find other places for them to go. So I think it's a process of knowing what that process is at, in this case, Embassy Suites, where we had a team of people trying to find rooms for clients coming in. And our hotels, our shelter managers didn't know what that process was and how important that number was. If people were walking in and they were filling those rooms with the people walking in, then we had no availability at Embassy Suites to send anyone anywhere. So we need to talk about that action plan and how that could work better. And maybe using RC Cares, that'll give us that number and that availability to know to send people where.
Excellent. Good information, good feedback. Sheila Walsh, you had a comment in the chat. Could you share that with us? You got your mic muted, Sheila? No, I guess she's not there right now. Ron Hedrick, I know you're on, and you were the AD of Ops there, so you probably got some insights. Could you share a bit of those things, especially as we got very nailed in the very beginning? So maybe you can chime in some of your observations.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Clark. Actually, my observations are, for the most part, just super complimentary toward everybody that was involved with this. The local team had done just an outstanding job on taking care of people. And of course, nobody anticipated the entire town of Estes Park being evacuated, which did throw a little bit of a wrench into the works. As far as planning for that kind of an event, I'm sure we can do some things to think about how do we better set up a robust evacuation center that's able to handle a very large event like that. But at the same time, the work that was done there was fantastic. As Karen was talking about, it was on the fly. There was only so much that can be done. They prioritize getting people into rooms, and with the idea that we'll catch up the paperwork. And I'd have to support that every single time. I just think the folks out there did just an incredible job. There are some things, of course, we can tighten up on. I do know that we had a little bit of trouble keeping track of some of the supplies, and I'm talking about from a paperwork standpoint. Everything got to where it was going to be. It was just a little bit, we could probably look at that a little bit more in the future and do a better job of being sure that 6409 process was followed all the way through. But just details, I know it created a little bit of a hassle for logistics, trying to find where things went. Otherwise, the other thing that we could probably do is be sure that we're as Lori was just talking about, resourcing our shelter managers as thoroughly as possible. And I know we were struggling with opening so many hotels up so quickly to even find people that we could get out there, whether it was just to be there when the clients got there, or if it was to be there and to man that hotel for the next week or two. So for the most part, what we were just trying to do is be sure we had somebody there that could then be that interface with the hotel. The client tracking was a bit of it got hairy in that we did shift from one system to another right when we were in the middle of putting a lot of people into hotels, which was not really the most fun thing to deal with. It came off fine, but there were some confusions along the way as to who was putting in information, when the source of information would change. That is, things were in different places now, and we were tracking some different things along the way. I did have a conversation just recently with National about the client tracker, and apparently they still haven't settled on the system that we're going to use for the future. I think if you were to go to the COVID toolbox, you would see that the client tracker that's up there was the one that was, I think, probably originally used. And as we know, that they did change that partway through. So they're not quite sure yet where they're going to wind up and all that. One other thing is just to be aware of, Clark and the group, is there is a new training for mass care management. I think we're going to want to dive into that pretty quickly and get up to speed across the board, get all our shelter managers well versed in that. One of the things that is integral to that process is the advanced operational planning procedure. And we're going to want to try to see if we can take that and get really good at that process. It relies heavily on the mass care planning tool. Some of us have experienced trying to use that in the past. They're working right now on trying to get that tool up to speed so that it will allow us to do non-congregate sheltering as part of it. Those of you that have worked with it know that it relies heavily on the traditional big shelters, congregate shelters. So we're going to be looking at that and trying to get that into our system also. Other than that, I mean, it was just what an incredible group, and you guys did just wonderful. And I'm so glad, Clark, that you and this team did all the training that you did through the summer, because obviously people were well equipped to do a great job for our clients. That's all I got.
Thank you very much. It's good information, a lot of follow-up there, Ron. Thanks for all the work I got to do. Corey, you had your hand up there a minute ago. I think you wanted to share something, so you want to chime in?
Yeah, but I've totally forgotten what that was now. Sorry.
Okay.
Oh, I do remember now. I do remember. So all the trainings, which a number of people have talked about, the scenario-based trainings that we were doing early in the genesis of the strike team, we will start that again. But what I would like to see from you guys is some ideas for me to create the scenarios. So I already have a scenario about the evac center versus shelter and how that would be. So if you, based on your experiences with the Cameron Peak Fire, feel free, just email me an idea, and so I can create an exercise for us. Thanks.
Great, super. Yeah, that would be a great idea for anybody that's got some ideas about how we can make training more fun and rewarding. It would be super, because it's a challenge all the time. Diana, you were the shelter manager, I believe, on that DR, and so you were a very integral part. Would you like to share some of the things that you know we need to address?
Overall, I agree with Ron, and I have to apologize here first. I am fostering a little 14-week-old puppy, so if I yell, I'm not yelling at the group, I'm yelling at my little puppy. So yes, I have to agree with Ron. We really have a great regional team, and everybody who stepped up, they did a superb job. And again, no deployment is ever the same, especially when we're dealing with a pandemic. But the three crucial sheltering lessons from 2020. The first one was continuous communication. We found that non-congregate shelters require a little bit more communication. There are fewer workers on the site, and there is no site management on the site, no site management experience from most of the volunteers that are on the site. So we're going to have to do something about maybe some training on the paperwork that is done, so anybody can step up and complete paperwork or help complete the paperwork. The capturing information on all the clients, that was my number one thing when Thea and Lori left. A couple of days later, when I was there managing the shelters, they came in, literally barged in my room and said, stop everything. We have this new tracking tool that we have to do. And, I'm like, okay, no problem. How do you do it? Well, we don't know. Nobody knows how to do it. You got to figure it out, and everything has to be completed and in by Monday. And so it created a little stress. So, capturing all that information and doing some training on this new tracking tool would be really great. And I would hope that it is completed and ready to go before our next deployment, so that we at least have some training and we know how to work with it. The third one was, again, the regional readiness. Because of the strike team and how we were all prepared, it made it possible to have a successful response. And that's where I think we did really great in, which is the reason why we are continuing with the shelter strike team and providing updated information on changes, that occur, plus any training necessary.
Okay, great. Thank you. Bob Springer, are you able to come back on?
Can you hear me any better?
A little better. Go ahead.
Yeah, the one thing I noted, I initially started at the Embassy Suites with Scott as an SA, and then I got promoted to a supervisor and went to Fort Collins. The hotel we used was really cooperative. They really wanted to help, and there was really nothing they couldn't do for us. The one thing Our office was on the second floor. It was away from the front of the building. And I mentioned that in that we didn't see everybody every day. I know there were a lot of people working, but there were some folks I feel, in fact, I know there was one or two people that had left and weren't there for a couple of days, and we weren't able to kind of touch bases and correct that. That means that those 2 rooms were being paid for and they were empty, essentially. So as a cost-saving matter, that's the one thing that I had trouble with. Other than that, I thought it went really smoothly using the non-congregants.
Great, a couple of good points there, no question. Working with our partners and trying to maintain the good awareness of our donor dollar communications. One of the things that I always struggled with a lot was how infrequent we had communications with the clients that were in hotel rooms, et cetera. And, you know, to me in a congregate environment, it's so much easier to do what we need to do than it is in a non-congregate environment. But that's just the way I guess I see things. Anybody else got anything that they would like to share? Amy, you still got your hand up if you want to say anything else. Laurie, you still got your hand up. Anybody else that wants to come in?
Bonnie?
Yeah, Bonnie. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, thanks. So I had an opportunity to deploy at Hurricane Laura before our fires here in Colorado. And I was so impressed in Colorado with how we were able to literally take care of everybody who presented themselves to us almost immediately. That was not the case at Hurricane Laura. And so whatever we did here needs to be modeled in other parts of the country, because it was so much better than the experience I had down in Texas.
Thanks for that. Good. Lorraine Jansen, did you put your hand back up?
Yes. I want to respond to the communication with clients. When we first started setting up shelters, we did have a process where we were contacting the clients almost on a regular basis, whether it was a quick phone call in the morning just to check in with them or to check in about meals. But unfortunately, as the DR grew, that ability to do that started waning. And I don't know what a good solution to that situation is, because like several people indicated, we just didn't have the staff to continue that communication. But it is much more difficult in a non-congregate setting.
Yeah. Good point. Thanks for that, Claire. You know, that we do need to work on that. And I think there are some possible solutions that we'll consider, but this is, yeah, it's important. Laurie Ashu, you got your hand up. Did you want to chime in again?
I do. Just 2 things. I know that at the Embassy Suite, to try to keep track of those clients, Peggy Johnson was the shelter manager there, and she did utilize some volunteer Red Cross volunteers and some others that came in through other groups, and went around daily and checked on those clients that did not come in to the office and pick up meals, just to make sure they were still in their room, still were okay, knew that there was meals available at the office there. So that's one suggestion for those non-congregate shelters. Of course, depends on your staff, which leads me into the second thing, the volunteers. We had a number of groups that came, some of them sent from headquarters for us to utilize, and the way that it was chosen to utilize, they would get sent back to us. And so the volunteer teams were upset that they weren't being utilized or were being sent all over town. So we need to get that communication with whoever sends them to us, what they want us to do with them or what we said we're going to do with them, and they can be done that way. That's it.
Excellent points. Thanks so much, Laurie. Appreciate that. Amy Harrison, you still have your hand up. Did you want to contribute some more?
No, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Just make sure that we're managing everything here. Anybody else that they'd like to bring something up perhaps that we haven't touched base on yet? We've touched a lot of bases. Okay. Darlene, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I did. As far as communication, when we're a non-congregate shelter, perhaps in the future, when we have to do that, we could start like a little, I don't know, group under one of the information, groups, just so for that particular hotel, that people could call into that group or email into that group to get the latest information instead of wandering around wondering what's going on and what's happening. And because I'm sorry, but the poster board that we put up with information doesn't always work for the client. So anyway, that's all I had.
Very good. Thank you so much. Anybody else that has some more information they'd like to offer? Remember that, the stuff that you folks have brought up and we've discussed, we're going to be passing that on when we have our meeting on the 10th, because this AR is being coordinated through regional, so they're very interested in looking at what took place on this event and how we dealt with it and some of the things that we can look at trying to improve the way we do things. So what you're sharing with us is not going to go unnoticed. So anybody else got anything they want to add?
Yeah, Clark, this is Brian.
Yeah, Brian.
Just the utilization of Teams, I thought was very good. That's a much more powerful platform than what even we were using it for. But I found it helpful because it went into the cloud and I could access documents and everything else on Teams at any time, even when other people were accessing it. So I think we need to utilize Teams, and it's much more powerful. We need to investigate more opportunities with it also.
Super, yeah, team. Well, and that's going to be the way we're moving forward in all of this. There's no question about it.
And I believe to be able to access files and information, everybody needs to have a Red Cross email, which I'm sure most of the team does. But if there is anybody who still needs one, if you can contact Julie DeSena, and she will provide you with a Red Cross email.
Yes. Thanks, Diana. Anybody else? All right, Diana, that takes us into, you want to give a little bit of insight as to what we're going to be doing in terms of developing the procedures and programs, policies, the way we get things, what we've done to start developing that document?
Yeah, so we are developing a document, you can call it a standard operating procedures planning, where it's going to pretty much have the purpose for the strike team, as well as what each position will be doing, just a little bit more information that we can go through regional and share it for those who don't understand necessarily what a strike team is. And then even after, it's something that won't really change. I mean, it'll stay up and it'll stay updated, those little changes, but the process will remain the same. So we are developing right now. We're in the process of going through a rough draft, and we'll continue to add to it. Hopefully, be done probably in 3 to 4 weeks. Clark, is that?
Hopefully, yes.
Or,
Yeah.
Yep. So Yep. So, and then what we'll do is we'll email it to each one of you and share it so that you can take a look at it and help us review it and see if there are any additions that would be made. And it will be a good opportunity for everybody just to look through it and read it and know what is on that plan.
Okay, great. Yeah, there are more to come on that, but we have been asked to really kind of formalize some of this stuff that we've developed through the shelter strike team process and how it can be utilized. And we did develop the stand-up process during the preparation for the anticipated events under the civil disturbance situation we had 2.5, 3 weeks ago. So that was, and Ron Hedrick has submitted some information that we're going to utilize in terms of some of the things that we do and the way we do it. So we'll be continuing to do that. You got anything else, Diana?
I think that's it for now.
Okay.
You want to discuss winter readiness?
Pardon me?
The winter readiness?
Yes, that's next. And I'll cover that. As you know, that there's been a team put together to develop really a readiness plan for our regional response to level 2 and above as it goes up. Ron Hedrick's very much part of that, so is Jody Akers. And we have done quite a bit of work working with the DPMs and DPXs, people, Troy Staples and so on, to develop how we're going to respond. The first initial phase was to look at the winter response because that's staring us in the face. In fact, I believe we're expecting some snow tonight, tomorrow, but it's not supposed to be as much as what we had to deal with a couple of years ago in the blizzard. But Josh Jackson has asked us to take a look at what our response would look like, how quickly we can stand up, where our gaps are, and so on. So we've been working on that. We've done quite a bit on it so far. There'll be another review of that coming up with the leadership team here in another week or so. I think next Friday is another deadline date. So that's just for your situation awareness that we are prepared to stand up if we have to. It's going to be along the lines of the shelter strike team. We'll be putting people in place. We've identified graphically where the shelter strike teams reside so that we know the closest folks to call upon when something would happen. And we also know where the voids are from what the DPMs have identified as their higher risk. So that's we'll support those from the adjacent areas as needed. So that's where we're headed. And this model is not just going to be for a winter storm. It's going to be how we can respond to any type of event that erupts in the region, regardless of what the cause is or where it is. So it's designed to be able to do that. So we're working on that. Hopefully we're going to have most of that completed by the end of my guideline is by the end of April, early May, because I think as Corey's point, you know, we could be faced with some difficult situations with forest fires, or if we would fortunately get a lot of rain, we may then have to be dealing with the events of the burn scar and flooding and things like that. So there's a lot to be prepared for. The other thing that I wanted to mention before we go off is where does the SST, that is the Shelter Strike Team model, reside as far as our initial development through national? And essentially, they now have put it in the hands of the regions so that we will be utilizing and developing our SST approach to response to really deal with an event that would, like we had last summer with the forest fires, last summer and fall, here in northern Colorado, where, you know, it actually escalated up to, I believe, somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but a level 5. And so that's what we're going to be doing with this arrangement under the guidelines of our new RDO, Josh Jackson. And I'm working closely with him, as is Corey and Diane, to really make this a response group that the region can rely on in a very effective way. And I think we've proven just exactly what we can do and how much better we can be as we experienced what we did this past summer. So that's where that stands. And I look forward to continue to working with all of you folks. We will be addressing a number of these issues that you have brought up, even though these will obviously be shared with the division. But there are some things here that we are going to start working on right away as a region, particularly in the training aspect and some of these areas that you folks have brought up. Ron brought up the shelter client tracking tool that was implemented as I think it was Bonnie. One of I can't remember who brought it. Who was at Laura? I was at Laura, and I was involved with the initial implementation of that tool at Laura, and absolutely was a very difficult thing to deal with because nobody really knew what they were dealing with. So those kind of things as we get down the road and we get the information from National on how to use this tool, how they want it used, what it's for. I think it's a super tool. Can be used really throughout a DR process for all the elements that we use to respond. But as you well know, the sheltering is one of the, it's the basic piece, and it's where everything, kind of starts and everything revolves around how well we're taking care of our clients and how we do that. So, it's very important. Technology, the training around technology is going to have to improve. We're going to take some steps to try to do that and offer those trainings on these meetings that we're having here with the SST. And we'll be doing that through the course of the year until we get totally interrupted like we did last year, where everybody was gone. So, but we'll deal with that. The last thing I'd like to mention is that we have decided to put a schedule together for our regular meetings with the SST. We're going to do twice a month, probably in the neighborhood of like every other week, although it doesn't actually work out on 13 weeks. But it's going to be essentially twice a month, and we'll have a specific agenda for those meetings, and almost every one of them will include some piece of the training that we're trying to impart. So that's perhaps what you guys can expect. I would really appreciate, and please feel free to communicate with Corey or Diana or Julie, myself, on things that you would like to see us do, suggestions that we can provide you folks, and making sure that you're well trained and ready to go when the time comes, because that's the whole idea behind this idea of developing shelter strike teams to respond in a very timely fashion and be equipped to be able to deal with things immediately on the ground as the first groups there. So we're going to be doing a lot of cross-functional development in terms of how logistics functions, how planning functions, and so on, so that you really do have a good understanding of when a DR is stood up, what's going on, and the importance of your role as it relates to the other areas. So that's the direction we're going. So does anybody have anything they'd like to add to us right now?
Clark, I'd like to just take this moment to thank everyone who's been here on the strike team meetings, and to let everyone know that this is not a closed group. So anyone else in your chapters who is doing sheltering, who is new, who you think should understand how the strike team works in a DR or in a response, please invite them to these meetings. These meetings are open. And the more information that we can get from other areas of the responsibility, and they understand what we do, that only helps the entire operation.
Great point. Thanks, Corey. Okay. Yeah, Patricia Cook just shared that she bought a phone at Walmart during, I guess, in order to take care of the communications problems. We do those kind of innovative things, that's, you kind of do what you have to do, right, Patricia? Diana, do you got anything to add?
Nothing more for now. Thank you, everybody. You're a great team. You make a great team. You make us all look good. And we
Julie.
really appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks. Julie, do you got anything you need to bring up?
No, I don't think so. Just that if you have any volunteers that you'd like to be on the strike team, let me know so that I can add them onto the roster so that I can get them invites out to the meetings.
Great. I was going to bring it up. Thank you so much. I'm glad you did. Yes, please just email Julie with the name and we'll get them so they can get an invite to these meetings. Because even though this is, we nomenclature at the shelter strike team, that's what they're designed to do. It's part of mass care. So all of the mass care components that go into this, we want to have those folks part of this group, and so we can cover all the bases as we try to provide the mass care response in any DR that we're asked to stand up. And one last, Ron Hedrick, do you have anything to add?
No, Clark, just again, thanks to this group. This is just the key to everything working in this region. So thank you all for everything you're doing. Thanks
for that. I appreciate that. With that said, we're obviously ahead of schedule on this. I don't have anything that needs to be reviewed. We got a lot of work to do over the next several weeks, and guaranteed that you all will be being called on to help us get through some of this stuff based on the different areas that we're covering. So again, thanks so much for being part of it, and all of your teams that are in the different chapters. Encourage them to partake in these discussions as we put out the notices. Appreciate it very much. Thanks so much and have a great day, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Clark. You did a good job.